Hello again. We are going to talk about William Wordsworth. I've got some notes for you. We're going to look at a couple of his poems. He lived from 1770 to 1850, and like I told you, he was a classicist, so somebody who appreciated the rules and the structure of poetry. Some of his background: he was born in the Lake District in England. His family lived in the community or town of Cockermouth, and this was like outside of London. So he was in nature, always loved nature. He writes a lot about nature. His mom died when he was 8 years old, and then he continued to go to school, even once his mother was dead. Then he was sent to a boarding school. He lived at the boarding school. Then his father died when he was 13, and his inheritance from his father was withheld from the family, so they had some hard times for a while. He left boarding school and was eventually able to, he got the money together, was able to go to Cambridge. So he went to Cambridge University for his education, and in his third year of college, he went on a walking tour of France. Remember, he loves nature. He wanted to walk the French countryside, and this was pretty transformative to him. He wanted to go back. He wanted to write about it. He was quite inspired. And he was really inspired also about the French Revolution. He liked what was going on there with kind of democracy happening. He liked the fact that the working classes were kind of rising up and getting more power. So he wanted to return to France just to be a part of that. So once he graduates from Cambridge, he goes back to France, and on the screen I have a picture there of Tintern Abbey. Those are the remains of Tintern Abbey, and he writes a poem about Tintern Abbey, and this is the place where he was at when he writes about that. While he's in France, he falls in love with the daughter of a surgeon. Her name is Annette Vallon, and was deeply in love with her. And then he's forced to leave France because there was tension between French and English. It wasn't safe for him to be there anymore with the French Revolution going on. So he has to leave. He has to leave Annette Vallon, and he sinks into a pretty deep depression when he has to leave her and come back to England. And in 1795, he received some money, quite a bit of money, from a friend who had passed away. And he didn't have to work. He was able to devote himself entirely to writing poetry. And this kind of helped him shift out of that depression. His sister Dorothy moved in with him, kind of took care of him, especially when he was having some of his difficulties mentally. And the two of them, in 1797, they moved to Alfoxden House in Somerset to be near Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Wordsworth really admired his poetry, and the two of them then started to collaborate. In 1798, they published Lyrical Ballads, and like I told you in the other video, this was wildly popular poetic collaboration. In 1799, they published the second edition of Lyrical Ballads, and then in 1802, finally, after all of these years, he inherits the money from his father, left from their father, and he could live a little more comfortably, so he marries Mary Hutchinson in 1802. And things are okay for a while, and a couple of years. In 1805, his brother drowns to death. He just has some years of like personal disaster that happen financially to him, and he's probably somebody who struggled with depression, and he would kind of have highs and lows, and he sinks for a while into this depression. And then in 1843, he is made poet laureate. So we still have poet laureates today. We have a poet laureate in the United States. There's a poet laureate in England. This is the highest honor among poets. Like, if you are poet laureate, you are the top dog in the world of poets. You get paid a stipend just to be a poet. You get buried in Westminster Abbey in Poets' Corner. It's very important position, and he gets named this, and he's one of the very first poet laureates. So this is a high, high honor for him. And then in 1850, at the age of 80, he dies, and he's buried in Westminster Abbey. So some of his poems, I told you he wrote lines composed a few miles above Tintern Abbey, and if you had your books, we would have that to look at, but since you don't, I posted a link for you, and I'm just going to go to it, and I'm going to kind of walk you through. It's a longer poem, but we're going to kind of break it down as to what is happening. So here we go. 5 years have passed, 5 summers with the length of 5 long winters. So it's been 5 years since he was there, and now he's back. And again I hear these waters rolling from their mountain springs with a soft inland murmur. Once again do I behold these steep and lofty cliffs that on a wild secluded scene impress thoughts of more deep seclusion and connect the landscape with the quiet of the sky. So he is appreciating nature, appreciating the seclusion of nature. You'll see that he almost worships nature in his poetry. That's something that he definitely brings up many times. Okay. The day is come when I again repose here under this dark sycamore and view these plots of cottage ground, these orchard tufts, which at this season, with their unripe fruits, are clad in one green hue and lose themselves mid groves and copses. Once again I see these hedgerows, hardly hedgerows, little lines of sportive wood run wild, these pastoral farms, green to the very door, and wreaths of smoke sent up in silence from among the trees. So he's definitely idealizing, like all these little cottages have these perfect little, wreaths of smoke coming up out of them, and beautiful little hedgerows, and the orchards are just starting to get fruit on them. And he's creating this image, like you should be able, he's using a lot of imagery, creating the image of this place. With some uncertain notice, as might seem, of vagrant dwellers in the houseless woods, or of some hermit's cave where by his fire the hermit sits alone. These beauteous forms, through a long abscess, have not been to me as is a landscape blind to a man's eye. But often, in lonely rooms and mid the din of towns and cities, I have owed to them, in hours of weariness, sensation sweet, felt in the blood and felt along the heart, and passing even into my purer mind with tranquil restoration. So when he's sitting alone in London, he's sitting in his apartment, this is the place that he goes to in his mind. Like, this is the happy place that he goes back to. For the rest of this poem, I'm going to have you read the rest on your own, and then we will talk about it, because you can see it's quite lengthy, but I wanted to get you started just so you know kind of what's going on and what he is commemorating and why he's writing about this very special place. Then we go to a couple of shorter poems from him. This is from the Lucy poem collection. These two are from that. Lucy poems are a collection of 5 poems that he wrote. And we don't know, nobody knows who Lucy was. Like, was it a lost love? Did he write it for his sister? It's kind of mysterious, but it was a collection that he wrote for this Lucy. So we don't know who exactly he meant it for. But one of them is She Dwelt Among the Untrodden Ways. It's a short poem, but it's pretty powerful with kind of his metaphors and his imagery again. She dwelt among the untrodden ways beside the springs of Dove, a maid whom there were none to praise and very few to love. So if she's living in untrodden ways, she's living where there are not a lot of people. Besides the spring of Dove, like that's a place, she's a maid and there are not many people around her. Nobody around her to praise her, very few around her to love her. Here's where he uses a metaphor. A violet, she is a violet, by a mossy stone. So she is beautiful by this ugly thing. She's kind of this spring of beauty in this ugly place. A violet by a mossy stone, half hidden from the eye. Fair as a star when only one is shining in the sky. So we get that simile, like she's beautiful. She stands out among everybody else. She's gorgeous. She lived unknown, and few could know when Lucy ceased to be. But she is in her grave, and oh, the difference to me. So Lucy died. Very few people knew of her beauty and her greatness and her kindness, but our speaker is heartbroken and misses her. Another one, Strange Fits of Passion I Have Known. This is also another one of the Lucy poems. It's a little bit longer, but I'll take you through it. Strange fits of passion have I known, and I will dare to tell, but in the lover's ear alone what once to me befell. So he's going back. He had these strange fits of passion. He's going to tell us about this story. When she I loved looked every day fresh as a rose in June, I to her cottage bent my way beneath an evening moon. So every night he would go to her cottage. She's very beautiful. Upon the moon I fixed my eye all over the wide lay. With quickening pace my horse drew nigh those paths so dear to me. And now we reached the orchard plot, and as we climbed the hill, the sinking moon to Lucy's cot came near and nearer still. In one of those sweet dreams I slept, kind nature's gentlest boon, and all the while my eyes I kept on the descending moon. My horse moved on, hoof after hoof he raised and never stopped, when down behind the cottage roof at once the bright moon dropped. What fond and wayward thoughts will slide into a lover's head? Oh, mercy, to myself I cried, if Lucy should be dead. So she is like the moon, right? And she was up in the sky and she was living, and then she dies. And he didn't get to her quick enough. So he missed her death. He missed saying goodbye to her. So those are the William Wordsworth poems that I want you to be familiar with. Be sure that you read through all of the lines composed above Tintern Abbey and be ready with that next week. See you later. Bye.